An average of over 55,000 people illegally enter the United States every month. How does that affect our cities? How does it affect the crime rate? And what do we need to know that the legacy media isn't telling us? Find out right here. I'm Drenda, and this is Drenda on Guard. Let's get into it. We must stand up. There are answers. We declare a war on sadness, war on sadness, war on sadness, sadness, war on sadness. Self-made gods are nice things to have around until people actually start to need God. And that's what's happening in our culture. We need to do something. We need to say something. We need to stand up, be bold and courageous. You've got to stay on guard. Hi, I'm joined today by senior security expert and CEO of Integris Risk Solutions, Nathan Rasper, to discuss the rise of crime and the crisis on the U.S. border. Nathan, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you for joining me. So you have been in service and in security for over 20 years, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me a little bit about your background, what you've done, and what you're seeing through your security firm at the border.
Background is federal law enforcement in a specific area that addresses the issues that happen at the border, as well as private security and intelligence, gathered information, reporting it, things like that. So supporting in risk management for large-scale companies, NGOs, churches, establishing security protocols, things like that. So it's our responsibility to watch and keep an eye on these things so we can properly advise our clients and those people that come to us that have concerns and address specific threats. So it's in the main line of my experience and with our company to provide that service.
And what have you been seeing at the border? I mean, we see reports and hear things, but what are some of the most serious things you see happening?
Well, you'll see in the news, a lot of this is going to be open source, but you'll have seen that, actually it's all be open source, let me clarify, the different pursuits the Border Patrol may get into where people are coyote or smugglers bringing, people illegally into the United States. And sometimes those end in accidents, and people are injured and or killed. Because of the influx and the overwhelming volume, people who have significant criminal histories, people who are sexual predators, people who are against our country, I might say of a extremist terrorist nature that want to harm the U.S. and other criminal enterprises are taking full advantage of what's going on at the southern border and the distraction and overwhelming of government forces to smuggle drugs, smuggle people, and a lot of that process sometimes gets painted over as it's just families, moms, dads trying to do things that are better for their family. And there is a component of that, but there's a much darker side to this and a much more dangerous side that they're risking more than they probably should, apart from breaking the laws of the United States. But there's families will sell other members of the family into the sexual trade to be able to have a preferred family member come to the United States and pay for that, smuggling with the coyote. So there's identity theft, overwhelming to cities and communities where these the people coming in now are asking for help because there maybe not work or they don't have documents to work legally, and in those industries and those locations they can't obtain lawful employment.
Right.
So it's a snowball that is building and is rolling downhill right now.
Yes, and we're even seeing it here in our own city, Columbus, Ohio. A 10-year-old girl was raped by a legal immigrant and actually became pregnant. Just so sad. The whole story is shocking. And the left kind of blew this up to make a huge deal over the fact that she had to go over the border to get an abortion, which was not true. because the Ohio heartbeat bill would have allowed for her to have an abortion because of her age and, you know, the harm to her, potentially to her body. However, they blew this up as a story about abortion, you know, and you can't get an abortion in Ohio. But then what we grew to find out was that this was an illegal immigrant that impregnated her, not only impregnated her, but also impregnated her mother, which is just, the whole thing just gets me more and more disgusted the more I look at it. And the mother was defending this illegal immigrant. So he's been working illegally here in the country for years. And this little girl, her life's impacted. And this is a sad story, but there are stories like this all over the United States. People's lives have been taken. People that are coming into a country and they don't really have the value system. They didn't come in through the legal means. They weren't integrated into the culture, into the country in a legal way. They come in here with whatever kind of motives, like you say, whatever kind of backgrounds, possibly a terrorist background. They come in here. I've even heard, and you can verify this or not, that many of these people coming across the border are more military-age young men, and that it would almost look like we're building up a armed force in the United States that's kind of underground that would be coming in to violate America from within. What do you think about that?
No, I would agree with 100%. Yes, military-age males, and it's being seen. It may not be reported all the time, and yeah, that has always been the plan for those who hate America and want to destroy it, is to either attack it from within and cause problems or to bring in people, right? Yeah. And so that's been the ploy the whole time. So they're taking full advantage of that. Yes, that is very much the case. And, you know, I can't speak to direct intelligence on that, but there's plenty of stuff open source that as you're reading and seeing, you can put two to two together. And also that case with the illegal alien who committed that atrocity against that young girl. I wish I would say that's unique. And like you said, if it's not, I personally targeted and looked for arrest and prosecution people who have done that. And it's not uncommon.
Good for you. Good for you. We appreciate men and women like you that are out there fighting crime and injustice and trying to make our immigration fair and honest and lawful. It's not that any of us are against immigration in and of itself. I mean, my goodness, we are a nation of immigrants. It's when people come through the southern border, we don't know who they are. We don't know what they bring into the nation. We don't know what their ideologies are and what their plans are. And we certainly don't trust the current administration, why they're doing that. It looks like they're trying to build their coffers of voters. It looks like they have other means possibly too to build their militia against the United States, the people of America. I don't mean to sound radical, but that's what it appears like in every way that I can analyze and see what's happening. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I would also say that if you look at all the resources now that are being dedicated to the southern border, and the federal government, we don't have an excess of resources, right? When it comes to customs and border protection, other components, DHS. So in essence, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. So as anyone can see, if you're taking resources from one location and dedicating it to that other, you're now leaving those other locations more vulnerable, which, for example, the northern border or our sea border along the coast and things like that, where now the resources that are supposed to be patrolling and protecting us are being directed more so to the southern border as a priority. But now that's opening up a lot of other places where it's more easy for someone who's up to no good to pass into the United States on in a more permissive environment, and not having to cross, 100 miles through the deserts, and navigate, the criminal enterprise and the cartels and the rattlesnakes and all that kind of stuff. So there's a plenty of this picture that's being ignored, and and it's not truly being addressed in a proper way. So that's, I think something else that the news media needs to cover.
Mm-hmm. I saw that Arizona and Texas are pushing back. They're fighting back because they have been saying all along to the federal government, look, you're bringing all these people in, but you're not giving us any means, resources. Then we saw the federal government just flying these people to different cities all over the nation and infiltrate in communities. And it seems to be targeted in that regard as well, that they might be trying to put those into conservative areas to skew and to change populations and voting and that type of thing. But some of these states are pushing back and busing people to D.C., which I find almost humorous, actually, that they're giving them a taste of their own medicine. And as soon as they have, now we have Mayor Bowser, who's pulling in the National Guard because she needs help now, right? They need help to try to deal with this problem. But when Texas and Arizona have been crying out all along, say, we need help. What are you doing? You know, you're destroying our cities, our towns, you're destroying our resources and our communities. They weren't getting any help from the federal government. And we've heard so many things about defunding the police, about taking down ICE and not having these rules and laws. This is an agenda, is it not, Nathan? I mean, how do we turn everybody against those that keep peace and that are enforcing law? Why would they do that?
Well, if they take away the teeth of the lion, right, it's just a big cat. And that's what they're trying to do. The law enforcement stands for truth, right? In Romans 13, you know, we're supposed to carry the sword, and we don't carry the sword, you know, to do evil, but to bring righteousness.
Right. And you shouldn't have to carry it in vain either.
Exactly. That's just it, right? It's a purpose, you know, and they want to, the people that espouse these ideologies and thoughts, they want to get rid of that because they want, in essence, they want to be able to do what they want. They don't want to be held accountable. And in an area like DC, the district, which is a sanctuary location, you know, where they've long since not cooperated, right, with anything immigration related enforcement wise. And so they're seeing the repercussions. The other point to bring up is for the people that are being bused up to that location. As far as my knowledge is, all that is done by consent of the person. So where some people, I've seen some comments in the news were like, oh, they're arresting people and just putting them on the bus and driving them from Arizona to DC and dropping them off. That's not happening. Not from a state side, you know. The people will be transported with their consent, but there's plenty of recent border crossers that come in and they don't want to be on the southern border. They want to come north because there's more jobs, there's more opportunities. To get farther away from criminal activity. You can't, it's almost near impossible to come across this southern border and to be smuggled in or to come in yourself and not involve yourself in some way with a criminal enterprise, either cartels, and get tied up in it and things like that. Because the cartels control all the routes. You know, make no mistake about it. It's a fee for service type thing. If you want to cross through on this trail, you pay the person that quote unquote thinks they own it. And that's your permission to pass. Wow. So yeah, it's and it not only that, but it's spreading out people that we may not have been properly vetted. You know, historically and currently, it's very hard to vet someone coming from another country where that country may not have accurate records or may not have accurate record sharing with the U.S. government. And so there's it's not as simple as just, you know, plugging a couple numbers and some information into a computer system and getting a full readout on this person. These systems don't talk and not any kind of volume sharing. So that's another, it's very problematic. And, you know, once they're here, there's no accountability, right? And that, unfortunately, as we've seen, and it's covered in all the news, they're just releasing them. There's no accountability for sure. Wow. Right? And what's to make people show up if they are told, hey, you need, let's say, for example, you need to go to DC and report to X office. Well, what if they don't? Yeah. You know what I mean? And there's no, you know, the only recent change to that, which I think, you know, we may see is, it was in the news, the Supreme Court, you know, stopped the enforcement of the priorities memo under Secretary Mayorkas. So we'll still need to wait to see what the effects of that are across the, you know, the nation and how that's going to impact, you know, our border security.
What would you say is the difference between the last administration's policies? Do you see a big difference in this administration's policies and what it's doing?
Yes, I see there's a significant difference in the administration's policies. And having seen when I haven't been involved for so long, there has been a lot of ups and downs, but this has been one of the most don't want to say radical, but most
Radical.
strongest radical, strongest deviation off of the policies and what law enforcement is supposed to do, especially, what we're directed to by statute. This isn't something we do at a whim. The laws of this country were passed, and we're to enforce those laws. That's why law enforcement is in the executive branch, is to enforce it, not to interpret it, or to not to, have, political persuasion into what we do. And so, yes, there is a definite difference in priorities, definite difference in the resources that are committed to address this as a true crisis. And there's also, I would say, in essence, a desire to kind of paint over the truth. Things not clear, like you talked about with the case in Columbus, Ohio. They quickly spun that as it's a thing about abortion and, the heartbeat bill, and trying to tie that in, when that's not it. It's kind of like when, depending on who's doing let's say an active shooter, right, or a recent terrorist attack or domestic terrorist, you'll see a very big difference in the coverage from the news. And sometimes they'll blame the tool. Other times they they'll blame the attacker, but it's not consistent. And when they want to pull attention off of the person doing the crime, they blame whatever activity or the tool that aided them in that crime, right? And a hammer is a hammer. Right. How you use that hammer it's really up to you, and that's, it's just information trying to, I've never in my life seen it so. I feel like the media is weaponized against the truth and trying to, keep one narrative versus another. Yes. Yes. It's just crazy times.
We do have a video clip that I'd love for you to check out of the White House spokesperson there. Just see what you think of this. I love your response to Peter Doocy as he asked Karine Jean-Pierre about what's going on with the border situation.
D.C. mayor sent the White House a letter asking for National Guard help with migrants that have been bused here from Texas and Arizona. Is the president going to approve that request for the National Guard?
So, as to your question on the National Guard, I refer you to the Department of Defense. They will have that answer for you. We have been in regular touch with Mayor Bowser and her team. And I said this before. I said this last week about Republicans using migrants as a political tool, and that is shameful, and that is just wrong. There is a process in place for managing migrants at the border. This is not it, what they're doing currently. That includes expelling migrants as required by court order under Title 42, transferring them to ICE custody, or placing them in the care of local NGOs as they await further processing. Again, so what Republicans are doing, the way that they're meddling in the process and using migrants as a political pawn is just wrong.
So the White House's preference would be for small towns in Texas and Arizona to have to take care of these migrants rather than a large metropolitan city like Washington, D.C.
That is not what I said.
That is what you said. You said you think that
I
people
said
are
that
using
there is.
migrants.
Yeah, they are. They're sending migrants to big cities on purpose, using them as a political ploy.
So if they don't go to big cities, where should they go?
There's a process. I just laid it out.
There's a process. And they come to a big city, and now the mayor says she needs the National Guard.
That's because Republicans are using migrants who are coming here for who knows, because they're dealing with humanitarian issues back in their country. They're coming here for a better life, and they are being used. Peter, they're being used by Republican governors. That is what's happening.
Does any of this just make the president want to say, this is causing a lot of burdens on small cities, big cities, maybe I should just close the border?
What I'm saying is what Republicans are doing is wrong, and there is a process in place, and we should follow the process. There's a legal process in place, and they should follow it.
I hear some hypocrisy myself, but what are your thoughts, Nathan?
Well, unfortunately, I can't speak to the politics on either side of this, but I can tell you that she's definitely painting one side of a story. And the other thing about it is there's not a need for the National Guard unless they feel like there's some sort of threat, right? So that statement alone contradicts her narrative on if they truly believe that these are just people being, persecuted and manipulated by one party and brought in, but they're just looking for a better life, but then we can't handle them. But you need the National Guard. No, really, you need social services, which, the district has robust social service. They're, a more socialized location. So if you were going to pick any place to go, you'd want to go to a place that has significant social services. Right. And so I guess the location, these aliens, these legal aliens, or the term is non-citizen now, or fill it in, but they're going with their consent. So they're probably in Arizona saying, "Who wants to go to DC? Let's go to DC. Who wants to go to Atlanta?" And it's also not any secret that it's large cities where migrants have historically congregated because there are locations that have people that speak their language. More likely there's friends and family, more likely there's support roles and all this kind of thing. So to say that this is being done as a political tactic, it doesn't make, you can say do anything, but the truth of the matter is there's a reason if you go to like DC, there's Chinatown. There's a reason if you go to New York and there's, Little Italy, right? This is how immigrants have come to the United States since its founding. Right. So to say that that's, a political tool, they're just trying to hide the true issue, right? And being one thing and doing another. Right. The National Guard is needed if there's a threat, right? Or, even on a large scale humanitarian crisis, you're trying to say that now you have like a disaster, like you're saying this is now a state declared disaster because people are coming to your city. Right. I don't, it just doesn't make
sense. And
you know?
Also these states have cried out for answers and help from the federal government, which they didn't get. And they're not, the federal government is keeping them from enforcing the immigration laws and doing what they're supposed to be doing. And so it makes perfect sense. It's hypocritical to me that she's pointing the finger at the Republican Party when we can all see the Democrat Party has actually created the problem. They stopped building the wall. They are the ones that opened all this floodgate up, and for purposes we think are political on their side, right? To build an internal support system, more votes, bringing millions of people across the border to vote and to try to give them a vote, even when they're not citizens. We can see these things. I just think they think we're stupid, that we can't see the hypocrisy of what they're saying and doing. And then to flip it because these governors in Arizona and Texas say, hey, we can't handle these folks. We're going to send them to DC. They brought them in. Here you go. And then they're like, oh, we need the National Guard. And you're right. They have a concern that there must be some danger there. Now, I did just see that the Biden administration is now going to re-engage building the wall. So I don't know if that's a political punt right before the midterms or what that is, but Biden builds the border wall. President Biden gives remarks during a meeting on the U.S. economy with CEOs and members of the cabinet, and then he went on to talk about how they're going to start to finishing the construction on the wall. Of course, he's not calling it Trump's wall, but he's got a better policy and a better way to do it. But that was despite his campaign promises to do away with the wall. But all of their policies have failed, and so I think we're seeing that. I saw this article and I wanted you to comment that we're actually, as an administration, spreading atheism abroad. So we're bringing in people under humanitarian, they're saying the guise of humanitarian, when many of these people are not coming in for that reason at all. But the Biden administration is actively anti-God, anti-Christian. Representative Glenn Grothman said, Republican in Wisconsin. And he says that we're actually funding organizations abroad to encourage atheism. So we can't do that with Christianity from the federal government or any other religious organization, and so it's one thing for the department to be tolerant and respectful of a wide range of belief systems and to encourage governments to respect the religious freedom and interests of their citizens. It's quite another thing for the United States government to work actively to empower atheists humanist and non-practicing and non-affiliated persons in public decision-making. And so they're actually driving this with federal dollars. I don't know if you have a comment or if you're allowed to make a comment on that, but to actually oppress Christians and then turn around and fund those that are atheists and try to help them develop networks. DC has tried to help them put together networks as an integral part of their belief system. And we know that Marxism, communism, always atheism is at the root of that. So do you see something going on religiously as we end here today?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lies that the media sells is that atheism or agnosticism or things like that is not a religion. It is a firmly held belief that people have. The difference of atheism or agnosticism, just with my understanding of it, is that without a true baseline with which to make your decisions, right? Anything can be possible. Anything can be possible. It's whatever you're willing to accept is okay. And I think what I've seen in this administration is the fact that they have now turned atheism into a religion that is now persecuting other religions because they think that they're more right, and the whole idea between separation church and state, which, and I'm sure was never meant to not have religion. Our founding country was founded on these principles, right? People who are moral, who follow a moral code. People who don't have a moral code based on something set in stone, like the Bible, Judeo-Christian values, things like that, their code can change. They don't have true principles, right? It can change overnight, and I think they are doing that. This is kind of like I don't know if I want to say they're turning the sun, atheism, because it's always been there. It's always been, latent, and it's anti-God, because I think the principles are completely against what the Bible speaks for, right? Participation, and if you go to Proverbs, if the person who's not willing to work doesn't eat, and there's a lot to that. And I just think that they are absolutely doing that. And they're almost, and I'm not just going to speak to Judeo-Christian values. Anybody, I even go to the other, monotheistic, like Judaism or even Islam for that matter. There's a push against that because regardless of where they're coming from, they draw a line in the sand, and there are just some things that, culturally aren't going to be acceptable, or religiously won't be acceptable. Right. So therein is the fight that there's no more than one way, right? They want more than one way to get to the end. And the Bible makes it very clear. And no one comes to the Father except through Jesus. And so I think that is kind of the offense of the atheist community, the fact that they can't do whatever they want and just have their ending. And I think you're seeing that pervasive in all like the Antifa movement, which is communist. Yes. Black Lives Matter, that kind of group, that kind of things where they're definitely underlined to, what do you call it, rivers of communism or socialism built into that.
Sure, they said it in their beginning, in their foundation, Black Lives Matter, on their website. They trained in Marxism. The founders trained in Marxism, and even said that they were against the nuclear family, want to see the breakdown of the nuclear family, equity. So it's not about a skin color issue. This is an ideology that's anti-God, it's anti-Christ, it's anti-Christianity, and that it was used to carry an agenda to the nation, to defund police, to break down law and order, and I really believe to try to federalize all law enforcement so that states could not govern their own communities. Police officers, sheriffs could not oversee their own elections, their own local government. States can't pass their own laws. This goes back to our Constitution. And really, do you believe? I believe it's to destroy the Constitution and bring our nation down. And that is their end game. What can people do in a practical way to help law enforcement, to help deal with these situations and support you guys as you're trying to bring security and the rule of law back into play and deal with this two-tiered justice system that we see is wrecking our country?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is I think there are people who are called to be protectors for such a time as this, and they're not following their calling, right? It says in the gist that, the kingdom of God, you may choose to participate, right? It's not a guarantee. You decide, how much you want to participate in. And even like the story of with Esther, God gave her the choice. She's like, you can do this. And if you don't, you'll perish with your people, but I'm going to have someone else do it.
Right.
So this is right. And so that's where calling for people to stand up for that. We are called, it's been a calling on my life is for such a time as this, to be there to help protect people. I am a protector by nature. God has designed me that way.
Yes.
And people need to step up and also know that law enforcement isn't your only solution. Even like local sheriffs and things like that, they're politically elected officials. So you can have a Democrat or Republican, or independent or Green Party, fill in the gap. So that's an important thing to look at. So private security is a good option, especially in areas where the defund the police is, because we're not drawn away because of politics. We're bound by contract to protect you and your property and your people and your clients. And that's our sole purpose. And, and those are, ways that, you can expand, protect yourself, but participate, go out there and engage the community, especially with law enforcement. You can do it by voting for candidates who support law enforcement. Law enforcement is not evil.
Right.
All cops are not bad.
Right.
And this is they're definitely trying to muzzle the lion, and to take away the tools from those who are sent to bring justice and bring people to the justice system, right? So I would definitely say that, and participate, be in your community, in your government, not just voting, but take on these roles in schools and in churches. Look for things that you can fund. Nonprofit groups that provide protection for churches or school districts, things like that, or participate in security program. Learn the details and, be a good student of history and of the Bible and understand that these things are coming, right? We know that we see these things. It's not a mystery to us, but we still have we should still participate. Responsibility, that's the word I look for, to continue to do the good work. Occupy and take ground for the kingdom. And Pastor Jen, I know you preach this as well, is we're to take ground for the kingdom. Yes. And the enemy is going to contend for that ground, but we know we have the victory. But nonetheless, we have to fight and we have to seek the strategy that God gives us to pursue that battle.
Yes.
So we have to do it, and just people, I think too many people now, they're afraid to take on a fight, right? Because they're like, if I do this, this is what happens. Well, yeah, and so what?
Right. And if enough of us rise up, at some point you break through.
Absolutely. And that's how, the value of numbers. If people really, I've been in South America, I've trained down there and different things. Like, if you want to see what truly happens in a socialist system, where in the one hand you have bread and the other hand is a hammer. Right. So we'll give you the bread, but if you do wrong, we're literally going to hit you with the hammer. There's a reason the police walk around with AK-47 rifles, and people get shot on the street. It's just a matter of, that's the oppression, right? We give you what you want, but you do what we say or else. And it's not like, hey, let's go to a justice system. It's like, we'll execute you. Right. You can.
I've seen it too. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much so.
You're absolutely right. I believe we win this battle. It looks ugly, it looks bad, but believers across the world, people that love freedom across the nation, we have to rise up, band together, have our eyes open, see what's going on, and stand together, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you. God bless you. Have a great day.
Thank you too.
Soon. Thank you. So thanks for joining us today. Subscribe, share this, and we'll see you next time here at Drenda On Guard. There are a lot of Christians who would tell you, a lot of leaders, a lot of pastors that would tell you, don't talk about certain things. In many ways, the church at large has been outwitted by Satan. We don't want to be silent about these things. We want to speak up. It takes courage. It takes boldness. But if we don't address and expose the deeds of darkness, then they take over. We must counter it. We must know our enemy. We must know our adversary, and we must know what his tactics are. We cannot be complacent anymore. You have influence. God has placed you in a sphere of influence. You are a soldier of the light. We need to be straightforward with the truth. Help help us to be strong, God. Help us to do our part, Father, to be disciplined, to be ready, to be soldiers of light, soldiers of truth. God, help us to be on guard.